All right, this is Math 102, 16.7, further graphing of quadratic equations. So in 16.6, we learned of that formula, A times x minus h quantity squared plus k. That was called the vertex form. So now sometimes our equation is not going to be written in that form, but we can very easily put it in that form using this relationship right here. So we can determine the points of the vertex by taking the opposite of b and dividing it by 2 times a, and then plugging that back into the equation to find the y value. So I often think that these steps are out of order, but this is sometimes how they present it to you in your Hawks learning. So I'm actually going to do step 2 because I'm going to identify that my a is 1 because that's the number in front of the x squared, my b is 10, and my c is 21. So we're going to find the x coordinate by taking the opposite of b over 2 times a, and that's going to give us -5. Then I'm going to plug that -5 into the function. Wherever I see an x, I'm going to replace it with -5. And so when I calculate that, I get 25 minus 50 plus 21, which gives me -4. So my vertex is -5, -4. So now I can go up and write it, and when I'm looking at this formula, I'm going to replace my a, x minus h is what it's going to be replaced, plus k. And so I'm going to fill in my h, whoops, sorry, that's not what I wanted to do. I'm going to fill in my h right here with -5, and I'm going to fill in my k right here with a -4. And then, of course, the a is just 1. So now I'm going to clean it up. So my formula is going to be x negative makes that plus 5 quantity squared, and plus a negative, I'm just going to write as -4. So that's the quadratic function that's given, that's written in vertex formula. Now we're going to find the intercepts. And so one of the things that you can do is if you look at a function, okay, so if we have a graph, our parabola is going to do one of three things. It's going to either hit the graph at 2 spots on the x-axis, or it's going to hit the graph on 1 spot, or it will hit the graph on no spots, okay? And so this one is related to the discriminant. So here, the discriminant, which remember is b squared minus 4ac. If the discriminant is positive, it will hit the axis in 2 places. If the discriminant is 0, it will hit it in 1 place. And if the discriminant is negative, it will not hit the axis at all, okay? So one of the ways that we can do this is try to look at factoring that original equation. So if we have y equals x squared plus 10x plus 21, that tells us that we can try and factor it, where I'm looking for factors of 21 that make positive 10. That's positive 7 and positive 3. And so then if I set those factors equal to 0, actually this y should actually be 0. I'm going to get x is -7 and x is -3. So I have two x-intercepts, and then you have to write them as ordered pairs. And so when you write them as ordered pairs, that x-coordinate is going to be the number, but then the y-coordinate is always going to be 0. And so now we're going to find the y-intercept. And so here's the original equation, y equals x squared plus 10x plus 21. The y-intercept is going to always be the constant. So you would write the, 0 would be your x-coordinate, and your y-coordinate would be 21. So now we're going to graph it. So we've got our vertex was -5, -4. That's our starting point, okay? -5, 1, 2, 3, 4, okay? We could also have our x-intercept is -7, 0 and -3, 0. And then we could connect our graph. Okay. Now, sometimes they'll ask you to find points other than the vertex, so those intercepts would definitely work. But you could also find points by adding your movements, right one, up one, left one, up one, etc. And we'll look at that in just a second. So now we're going to graph this one. And one of the things that I want you to notice about here is that this one, my A is -1, and that means that it's going to open down, okay? So our parabola is going to look like that. My B is 8, and my C is -20. So to find the vertex, X is the opposite of B over 2 times A, which becomes -8 divided by -2, which is +4. Then I'm going to take my Y value and take -1, because there's a -1 in front of there, times 4 squared plus 8 times 4 minus 20. And that gives me -16 plus 32 minus 20, which comes out to be -4. So my vertex is going to be +4, -4, okay? The line of symmetry, remember, is x equals always what's your x-coordinate of your vertex. Now, to find the intercepts, I'm going to use the discriminant on this one. So b squared minus 4ac. If I take b, that's 8 squared minus 4 times a times c. That gives me 64 minus, oh, whoops, that should be a 20, sorry, minus 80, which is -24. And so since negative discriminant, there are no x-intercepts, which means also you could try to factor that, and you're not going to find factors of -20 that make +8. Well, I take that back. You would have to divide everything by -1, and then you'd have factors of +20 that are trying to find -8. The y-intercept, remember, your y-intercept is always the constant. So 0, -20 is your y-intercept, okay? Now, we're going to graph it, okay? So this is what it's going to say. It's going to determine 2 points on the graph other than the vertex. Since we have no x-intercepts, we're going to have to use a different method. So remember, your vertex was 4, -4, okay? And so you have to remember that the original movement was always to move right and up 1, okay? But now the movement is we are going to move, the new movement is we're going to move right, but since we've got a negative, we have to move down 1, okay? So that means that if I move right, I would add 1, but if I move down, I would have to subtract 1. So that means that I would go, the next point would be 5, -5, okay? Then I could also take the vertex, and so 4, -4. So now the new movement, if I, instead of moving right, I'm going to move left 1 and down 1. So I would subtract 1 and subtract 1. And so now I get 3, -5. So here's what my graph looks like. Plot your vertex. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4, -4. I'm going to go right 1 and down 1. That's going to make me at 5, -5. And then I'm going to go left 1 and down 1. And that's going to make me at 3, -5. And then I can graph my parabola. Okay? All right, so let's try this one. This one is a positive, so I know the A is positive. It's going to open up. So I'm actually going to find the vertex first. So I'm going to list A is 1, B is -1, and C is -2. So to find the X coordinate, X is the opposite of B over 2 times A. Well, isn't that nice? We get a fraction, okay? So the x-coordinate is 1/2. And so now the y-coordinate is 1/2 squared minus 1/2 minus 2. And so that becomes 1/4. I'm going to change this into fourths, which makes that 2/4. And I'm going to change this into fourths, which makes that 8/4. So now I've got 1/4 minus 2/4 minus 8/4, which is -9/4. Okay, so now I can go back and write my equation. Y equals A, parentheses, x minus h, quantity squared, plus k. And so I'm going to insert my h is a positive 1/2. My k is a -9/4, and my a is 1. So I'm just going to clean it up a little bit, and I'm going to write y equals x minus 1/2 quantity squared minus 9/4. Okay? All right, so if I use the discriminant to find my x-intercepts, b squared minus 4ac, b squared is 1 minus 4 times 1 times -2, which is 1 plus 8, which is 9. Since it's positive, I will have 2 factors, or 2 x-intercepts, and so now I have to factor. Y equals x squared minus x minus 2. I'm looking for factors of 2 that make -1, factors of -2 that make -1. So x plus 1 is 0, which says x is -1. So that is negative 1, 0. And x minus 2 is 0, which says x is 2. So 2, 0 would be my other intercept. The y-intercept, remember, here's your original equation, x squared minus x minus 2. The y-intercept is going to be negative 2. So we would write 0, negative 2. So we've got a bunch of points here that we can use to graph this graph. We'll start with the vertex, okay? And the vertex was, let's go back up here. Oh, the vertex, 1/2 and negative 9/4. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this into halves and fourths. So I'm going to go, let's do this. 1, 2, 3. So that's going to be 1. 1, 2, 3. That's going to be 2. 1, 2, 3. That's going to be negative 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And that's going to be negative 2. And then we'll go 1, 2, 3. That's going to be 1, 2, 3. And that's going to be 2. 1, 2, 3. That's going to be negative 1, 1, 2, 3. And that's going to be negative 2. Okay, so let's plot my y-intercept is at 0, negative 2. My x-intercept was negative 1, 0. And 2, 0. And my vertex is 1/2 and negative 9/4. So x is 1/2 and negative 9/4 is going to be right here. And so here is my graph. Now, I won't give you fractions, but I must have pulled that one out of your homework somewhere. So that's where your graph is going to look like. Okay? All right, let's try this next one. All right, so consider the following equation. Things I want to highlight here is this is a negative 3. So A is negative 3, which means it opens down. Okay, that's always a good thing to kind of recognize. B is 6 and C is 4. So to find the vertex, X is the opposite of B over 2 times A. So negative 6 divided by negative 6 is 1. And then your Y is negative 3 times 1 squared plus 6 times 1 plus 4. So when I work that out, that's negative 3 plus 6 plus 4 comes out to be 7. So your vertex is the point 1, 7. Okay, now you can use that to rewrite your given equation. Remember, you're filling in the A, you're filling in the H, and you're filling in the K. So A is negative 3, your H is 1, and your K is 7. And that's what your formula would look like, okay? Now to find the x-intercepts, we are going to look at the discriminant. So B squared minus 4 times A times C gives me 36 plus 48, which is 84. It's positive, so we have 2 x-intercepts. Now this one doesn't factor, so we are going to have to use the quadratic formula on this one to find those x-intercepts. So we're going to have x is equal to the opposite of b, which was, what is b? 6, negative 6, plus or minus. We've already done the square root because that was the discriminant. all over 2 times a, which is negative 6. So I do want to simplify my radical. This is square root of 4 times square root of 21, which is going to be 2 radical 21. So I am going to write this as negative 6 over negative 6 plus or minus 2 radical 21 over negative 6. So the way I'm going to simplify, the negative 1 over negative 1, negative 6 over negative 6 makes it 1 plus 2 square root of 2 over 6, because the negative over negative is going to make it positive, and that's 0, and then y is 0. And then I'm going to have 1 minus 2 radical 2, that should be 21 over 6, which actually I could simplify a little bit further. Let's take this and let's make this 2's cancel, make that 3, and then 0. Okay, so all I did was I simplified this into a 1, and this I canceled and made that a 3. And so positive divided by negative is going to make it negative, so that's where the minus comes in. And negative divided by negative makes it positive, and so that's where the positive comes in. So we take that negative out of the denominator, and it's not going to change the signs in the beginning. Okay, now finding the y-intercept. Remember, the y-intercept in the original equation is always your constant. So your y-intercept is going to be 0 and 4. So let's go back. Let me remember what the vertex is. 1, 7. Okay, so vertex was the point 1, 7. So we've got here. And then we have the y-intercept, which is 0, 4. And we know it opens down because we have a negative 3 in front of the parentheses. So what I could do is that I could figure out other points by going right 1 and down 1. So I'm going to add 1 here and subtract 1 here. So the next point would be 2, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then I could go left 1 and down 1. So from the vertex, 1, 7. If I went left 1, I would be at 0. And if I went down 1, that would be another, that would be, oh, I have that, oh, excuse me. You know what I did? Sorry. We have that negative 3 in there. So we wouldn't be going down 1, right 1. We would be going down 1. We would be going right 1, down 3. Okay, so I forgot there was that negative. So remember, negative 3x squared was the original equation, plus 6x plus 4. So I would go, the original movement would be, I'm going over here, original and then new. So originally I would go right 1 and up 1. And now I would go right 1, up 1 times negative 3, which says it would go down 3. So to get my next point, I could add 1, that's the right 1, minus 3, that's the down 3. So I would be at 2, 4. So I would be right here. And there's my 3 points. And basically you just need 3 points to graph that parabola. All right, we're going to stop here and then I'll make another video for the applications.